Okay, hello, hello, hello. Is that good? Okay, great. Ha, fantastic. Are we live? Happening? Okay, great. Um, well, hello everyone. Welcome to this year's second free professional development workshop hosted by InterMusic SF. My name is Crystal Pascucci, and I'm the executive director. I'm joined by Marcus Phillips, who is our communications manager, and Mark Clifford, who is our database manager. They're helping out with today's technical needs. Um, this evening, we are hosting Margot Melcon from Zellerbach Foundation and David Blazevich from Fleishhacker Foundation. These two foundations provide sustaining support in the Bay Area for arts programs through individual artists and arts organizations, InterMusic SF included. They're integral in providing stability for arts entities and help us achieve valuable missions, enriching our local communities with much needed arts funding. We're honored to have them speak today about the Common Application for the Arts, which they will speak more about shortly. As developers of the Common App, we look forward to hearing their expertise on using this new tool. For those of you who know InterMusic SF, which I know many of you have been in the InterMusic SF family for many years, welcome back. For those of you who may be learning about us for the first time and just getting to know us, I'd like to share a few things about our organization. First, I will read our mission statement. Next slide. First test of tech. InterMusic SF is dedicated to supporting and nourishing the Bay Area creative environment by offering dynamic programming and vital resources for music creators and audience members. We are serving as a grant maker since the inception of the musical grant program. We've awarded $1.1 million in funding, 374 projects. This year, the InterMusic SF's musical grant program has integrated the Common App, which is what we hope will provide an advantage to you all in the room and at this workshop in securing fundings for a more streamlined way. We're also a fiscal sponsor, sponsoring over 115 active affiliate entities like composers and ensembles and arts organizations. And we're a concert presenter of accessible free concerts in ADA compliant, centrally located venues. We produce SF Music Day annually, which is on October 20th this year, so mark your calendars. Today's workshop is a part of our professional development workshop series. Each spring, we offer free public workshops that provide practical, usable guidance on a variety of topics covering the business of the arts, so to speak, designed for professional musicians and artists and facilitated by local experts like Margot and David. We are happy to announce an upcoming workshop on May 23rd with Hugo Seda, Executive Director of Quinteto Latino. He'll be giving a workshop on all things individual giving. We will have that event available for registration on Wednesday of next week. We hope that you will continue to give and provide feedback about these services so that we can adjust accordingly. So please participate in our survey, which you will see in your inbox shortly after this workshop. Before we dive in, I just want to ask all of those on Zoom, if you are able, we would love to see your faces and maybe get a hello for a moment. And so if you can turn on your video quickly, and say hello. We just like to acknowledge the whole community that's here. Can you scroll over? Oh, go to the view. Let's see everybody, the big one. Keep going, guys. The gallery. There you go. Yay! Hi. Oh, so cool. Thank you so much for being with us. Okay, and without further delay, I'd like to introduce Margot Melcon and David Blazevich.
I will. Good evening, everyone. I am mindful of microphones. Microphones freak me out a little bit. So if I get too close, someone will tell me that I'm shouting. Great. My name is Margot Melcon. I use she, her pronouns. I am the program staff at the Zellerbach Family Foundation for Arts and Culture. Do we have a slide? What's our next slide? Oh, yeah. This is what we're doing. An introduction to using the Common App tonight, starting. So go to the next slide, please. I want to ask, and this is easy for the people in the room, but for the people online, maybe you can drop it in the chat. How many grant applications? Oh, wait. Oh, it goes that way. My notes printed out differently. Sorry. Let's talk about the agenda first then. For the next 30 minutes or so, David and I are going to run through what it looks like for grant seekers who have to apply to multiple different funding sources. It's challenging. We recognize that it's challenging. And part of the reason why we're here is to introduce to you this tool that we created, David and I, working in partnership with some of our fellow arts funders, created this tool called the Common App, which we're going to share some more information about with you tonight, including the information on the Common App that's about the general support. What is it? What do you use it for? Project support. What information should you include about your project? And budgets, or both organization and project budget templates that are provided with the Common App. Then we'll go through some general conversation about grant making, which I think, Crystal, you should probably join us for. Since we're going to talk about like what makes a good grant, what should you include in your grant application? And since many of you are here through InterMusic and they have an upcoming grant deadline on April 14th, you'll probably want to know some information about what to include in that grant application. Then we'll also have some opportunities for Q&A. So folks who are joining us online, Mark, I think, is going to be feeding us Qs, and we will feed the A's back at you. And then for folks in the space, we can talk about that in real life. All right, so go to the next slide, please. So this is what I was going to ask before. Just out of curiosity, A, B, or C? And again, folks online, you can put this in the chat. Folks in the room, show of hands maybe. How many grant applications did you fill out last year? 1 to 2? Okay. 2 to 5? More than 5? All right. We recognize that filling out grant applications can feel like a full-time job sometimes. Chasing the money is hard. It's a lot of work, especially because it seems like each funding opportunity has its own deadlines, has its own priorities, asks for the questions in slightly different ways, and it's maddening. We have, as funders, we have known this for a long time, and it came into really stark relief at the very beginning of the COVID pandemic. One of the things that we realized, a bunch of arts funders got together and did sort of a survey of relief opportunities, grant relief opportunities that were available to artists during COVID. And what we found was that there were 141 different funding opportunities that you could apply for. So in the midst of a global pandemic, when you weren't sure about anything, all of your gigs had been canceled, people were getting sick all around you, nobody was leaving their houses. Then you had to go to 141 different places to try and find support just to keep your organization afloat, to keep your work going, to sustain yourself through this uncertainty. And that number really stuck with a lot of us as being unacceptable. So though we had known there was need to find efficiencies before that, the pandemic and the deep inefficiency in funding opportunities really pushed a lot of us forward to think about how we could come together as funders to do better. And so, next slide, please. We decided to work on the Common App. The Common Application for Arts Bay Area is its full title, but the Common App. So what the Common App is it's a new tool for artists and arts and culture organizations and fiscally sponsored projects seeking funding in the Bay Area. Right now, it is local, and it is limited to the arts. We really wanted to start small, to figure out the mechanics of what a common app might look like, in the hopes that potentially we could expand this down the road at some point in the future. So it's designed to make applying to multiple different grant opportunities simpler and faster. It includes only the essential questions that the collaborating funders determined were necessary to make funding decisions. Here's how we did that. We surveyed all of the arts funders in the Bay Area. That was, what was it, over 25 different arts and culture applications for funding. And our partners at the Rainin Foundation made this massive spreadsheet where we sorted everything into buckets and categories, and here are the organization mission and history, and this is, and what we realized was everybody was asking pretty much the same thing, but in different ways. And that was nuts. So we looked at all of those questions and distilled it down to what is the information that we actually use, not the information that is nice to know, but what is the information we actually use to make these decisions, and narrowed down to a list of questions that is a little bit more manageable. In addition to narrowing down the questions, we also standardized the questions so that we ask them in the same way, using the same word counts with the same language, so that you will see the same question on multiple applications. So if you are applying to multiple funders, it will look familiar. And then finally, the responses, when you look at the Common App, the questions that are asked and the responses you provide in the Common App will get you 90 to 100% of the way toward a completed application for all the participating funders. We reserve that 10% for sort of bespoke programmatic specific questions for each funder, but that's 10%. So if you fill out the Common App, you will be 90% of the way toward having a completed application for, next slide, please. Oh, God bless it. I keep getting my slides out of order. At least they're not upside down. That's true. Well, I was going to go to the slide that has all of the funders that are using it, which is the next one, I think. Oh, it was there? Those people. Those are all the folks that are using the Common App. So if you are an individual artist or an arts and culture organization that is going to apply to the Fleishhacker Foundation, InterMusic SF's musical grant program, the Rainin Foundation's New and Experimental Works program, Theater Bay Area's cash grants, the Gerbode Foundation Special Awards in the Arts, or the Zellerbach Community Arts program, you can use the Common App and you'll be almost done before you even start. Okay, now go back one slide to what it's not. Oh gosh, you guys. This is my first time using this deck. I don't know if you can tell. Okay, so what it's not. Well, participating funders use a shared set of standardized questions. It is not a pooled fund. It is not one grant program. It is not that, right? Each funder still has its own deadlines. program priorities, guidelines and eligibility, and review process. We all still do that separately. The concern that we heard from a lot of folks was, well, if you're all using the same application, won't you all fund the same things? No, because we all still have our own goals that we're trying to accomplish with our grant making. Each funder asks a subset of the Common App questions that are relevant to their funding opportunity. So, for example, I use about a third of the Common App questions in my community arts application. Not all of them, just the ones that are relevant to my funding program. And David can speak to the ones that he uses. Crystal can talk about the ones that she uses. So the Common App is all the questions, and each funder only uses a chunk of those. The other thing is the Common App doesn't combine grant programs, so it's still separate, and it doesn't pool funds. So it's not one sort of central shop where all the funds are doled out. It's important to note what it's not, because we do get a lot of questions about like, oh, well, what does this mean? That's what it means. All right, 2 slides forward. I'm going to reorder these slides for the next time we use it. Okay, so the headline is, if you plan to apply to multiple funders, using the Common App will save you time and streamline the process. That's the headline. That's it. That's the important takeaway. If you take away nothing else, that's what you need to know. Next slide, please. How do I use it? So the very first thing that you want to do is go to the commonappartsbayarea.org. You can link to the Common App website, I think, through InterMusic, through Fleishhacker, through Zellerbach. All of the participating funders will feed you to the Common App. You can download and save the Common App as either a dynamic PDF or a Word document. Then you enter your responses to the questions. You do this at your leisure, whenever is good for you. It's not tied to a deadline. You will have these questions well in advance of needing them for any application deadline. You could download them right now. You might be doing that. No, just kidding. And then once you enter your responses to the questions, you go to the individual funder websites to access their online grants management systems, copy and paste your responses into the corresponding questions of the application form per their upcoming grant deadlines. That's it. It's that simple. It is just that easy. It's a place to store your own responses. Not yet. I'll talk more about that. Next slide, please. So in addition, on the Common App form, in addition to the basic organization information, the Common App will also include questions about general support, specific project support, and it provides budget templates for both project budgets and organization budgets. One note about the project or the budget templates, they are entirely optional. You do not have to use the budget templates, but if you do not already have a budget created, it's a good starting place and also gives you a sense of the level of granularity that we're looking for in budgets, right? It's just a template to sort of guide you through the process. So if you know as an individual that you are only going to apply for general operating support for your organization, when you go to the Common App, you only have to fill out the general operating support section of the Common App. If you know you're only going to apply for project-based support, you only have to fill out that section. You can also, though, fill out the whole thing and then have that information available. And I will tell you, that information comes in handy for marketing, for PR, for board recruitment, for like for all these things. Having easy answers to a lot of this stuff ready available is super handy to have. So you don't have to fill out the Common App, but it does come in handy. All right, next slide. David, I'm going to turn it over to you because do we want to pause for questions? Yeah, because I will just keep talking. Anything coming up online? You can also just interrupt us with questions anytime you want. Yes. Mhm. Yeah, so go ahead. David, you repeat the question.
So the question was, what is the sequencing? Should you fill out the, I'm making sure I'm getting this right. Should you fill out the Word doc and then be ready to, when you go on the online portal, to enter the information, or should you enter the information? That's right. That's right. So
Just want to quickly clarify that InterMusic SF for the musical grant program has all of these resources in the same place. So we have the Common App in those files, and then we have our practice application, which you can fill out after the Common App or maybe not at all. And then we have the online portal. We're just really urging people to use word processing software before actually, or, programs before you actually put it into the portal, because it's hard to see in the portal. It's just, it's not as clear as in like Word or Google Docs, but they're both in the same place.
right, and so the idea is that you fill out your own Word doc, you have that ready to go. When you get to the right question, you're like, oh, that's, and most of the participating funders should say on their application, our question 2 corresponds to question 4A of the Common App. So you go to 4A, cut, paste, is the idea. Another question? That's right. The question is, should you be an individual? Can you apply both as an individual and as an organization? And I think embedded in your question is also, do you want to apply for a project or do you want to apply for general support? Is that right? Depending on the timing. You do need to make a choice for each individual funder. Usually, well, I don't know. My assumption is they all accept just one grant application per, so you would need to make a decision whether or not you're organizing yourself as a fiscally sponsored project and want general support for a project for your work over the course of a year, or if there's a special project that you want funding for a specific production, performance, etc. It's both. So, and that's what I'll go through now. Maybe that's a good lead in to the next thing. I'll see if there's any more questions just about the overall structure, and then I'll go through how it can be used for general support and what general support might mean, and then Margot will talk about project support. Any other general questions?
So just one other clarifying thing. InterMusic SF refers to our fiscally sponsored projects as affiliates. So we're not talking about project by project. We're talking about you as a group, your entire entity. That is the affiliate. That's what we mean by, if other places you'll read or see this said as fiscally sponsored project is the same thing as a fiscally sponsored affiliate. They're synonymous.
I want to really highlight that. One of the things that we really tried to do in developing the Common App, and I just fell into it unwittingly, is to denude the Common App of jargon. We want it to be understandable by musicians, by artists, by people in the world, not people who do philanthropy for a living. And so thank you for that clarification, Crystal. So oftentimes we'll call something a fiscally sponsored project, but it operates like an organization that does not have its own nonprofit status, but works with a nonprofit to apply for funding like you do through InterMusic SF. Okay, does that make sense to people? Okay, so let's get into the use of the Common App to apply for general support. General support is also sometimes referred to as general operating support, and it's also sometimes referred to as unrestricted support. So you might hear that sort of interchangeably among the funders that are participating. General support grants are flexible, and they're to be used at the grantee's discretion for everything from administrative and operating costs. That would be, rent, insurance, website, staffing, that kind of thing. They can also be used for performance and presentation costs. This is sometimes that people get confused. They'll say, well, if it's general operating support, can I only use it for rent? No, it's flexible. You can also use it for performance costs, artist compensation, production expenses, venue rentals, et cetera. And it can also be used for other programming costs. So if you have community outreach programs, if you have educational programs, if you do artist residencies, the bottom line is it's flexible and the grantee can use it however they need to use it to accomplish their overall mission and aims. However, because this funding is flexible, most funders who provide general support tend to assess the strength of a proposal based on the overall alignment of the organization's overall work with the specific goals of their grant program. So, for example, the Fleishhacker Foundation, which is the foundation that I'm a part of, its Small Arts Grants program specifically funds and seeks to fund small arts groups in San Francisco, Alameda, and Contra Costa counties that produce and present innovative new work by professional Bay Area artists. So when we're assessing an application, our top priority is what are the strength of the organization's artistic programs, artistic projects that are planned for the year ahead. Other funders may be interested in your community engagement. Others may be interested in your educational work. So another example is Theater Bay Area. I'm not sure how relevant it is to this particular webinar, but they're going to be using the Common App for their Cash Sustains program later this year, which provides support for Bay Area theater companies to produce new theater works. And they're going to be posting their priorities later in the year as well. So the Common App is divided, the general support section of the Common App is divided into 3 sections. Section 1 is artistic projects. Section 2 is community outreach or other programming. And the third is other organizational priorities. And the reason why it's divided that way is because it allows funders to quickly look at to quickly identify what of the organization's overall work is most relevant to their goals and priorities. As I said, ours would be, we're looking closely at artistic projects, for example. Others might be looking at other areas. It also allows you to put forward in bold relief those things that you think might be most appealing to a funder. You know, if you're applying to the Fleishhacker Foundation, that's what I'm really going to be looking at. You can certainly fill out the other ones as well. If you've got it, you've got the template language because we've applied to other funders, but the one that's going to be most relevant to a specific funder, it allows you to highlight that. So for each of the sections, you're going to just put a few succinct paragraphs. You can even put a bullet point list, filling out in each box that you'll see. It's artistic projects, next box, programming plans, third box, other organizational priorities for the proposed grant period. Now let's talk about what we mean by the proposed grant period. Because we're not a pooled fund, each participating funder will have its own deadlines, its own timeline. So the proposed grant period, you're going to have to go to the funder's individual site, see what time frame they're accepting applications for. Some will want your program plans over the next year. Some will want your program plans over the next 18 months. Some will have a specific time frame that they're interested in. So what you need to do is, and this is, I'm sorry, a little difficult, but that's because we're not all one big foundation. You need to look at your full thing, select that time period that is of most interest to this funder and use that language for the funder to line up what it's doing. We realize in terms of this shift in the way that we're thinking about it, that we may have to pull those things out. So if you want to put 18 months, even though somebody asked for 12, it's kind of on us to be able to identify what those 12 months are. Nevertheless, if you want your proposal to really stand out, you might want to think about only providing that information that the funder is asking for. Artistic projects, let me just talk just very quickly. I think they're fairly self-explanatory. They should be. Artistic projects, we want to know the what, who, where, and when. What exactly are you commissioning, creating, developing, or performing? Who are the key artists involved? Where will it be performed? And what's the timeline? Or what time are you going to develop it and perform it? When you get to the next section of community outreach and programming plans, that's where you're going to put anything like workshops, panel discussions, artistic residencies, other educational programs that you might be doing or that your group might be doing. And then finally, in other organizational priorities, this is really optional, but it might be if you're, for example, doing any intensive EDI work, if you're doing a strategic planning process, if you're in the process of trying to secure programming space or build out some administrative space, anything that the funder might want to know that's not about your programming plans or your artistic projects that might be relevant to an assessment of your proposal. I think that is it for general support. Are there any questions about that or how that operates? Okay. Okay.
All right. Thanks, David. So I'm going to talk through project support. Project support is a little bit different because the project support grants are restricted to supporting the expenses associated with a specific project or event. So, I work at the Zellerbach Family Foundation. We have the Community Arts Program. The Community Arts Program is really targeting emerging artists and small to mid-sized arts and culture organizations in the Bay Area. Because we have a tendency to lean into individual artists and small and emerging folks, a lot of times we're working with folks who are doing one thing. Like that's the one project is the one thing that they're doing throughout the year. They don't have general operating support expenses. They don't have facilities. They don't have ongoing staff. They don't have administration. They're coming together to do one project. And so if that feels like a better fit for you than general operating support, a project support grant might be right up your alley. And of the funders who are involved in the Common App, I think all but Fleishhacker are focused on project-specific work. So for project support, you can apply for project support to compensate collaborating personnel, which includes artists, technicians, event staff, it's anybody associated with the project that is happening, right? So that includes front of house, that includes, the musicians or the dancers or the actors or the composers or the designers, anybody who's associated with the project. It can cover facilities, materials, services like photography, videography, craft services, lighting, sound, et cetera, right? It can also cover any marketing and communications, anything that's associated with this project that you might need support on, because it all costs money, we know. And then reasonable administrative fees and overhead. So even if you are not an established organization, either 501c3 or a fiscally sponsored organization, there are still administrative costs that go along with producing anything, right? Travel expenses, catering, hospitality, like there's all kinds of things. So a reasonable amount of administrative fees and overhead, all of that can be included in your project support ask. So again, examples of project support include the Community Arts Program, Rainen's New and Experimental Works Program, and then some of Theater Bay Area's cash grants, the Gerbode Special Awards in the Arts, that is for a specific event or project that is being created, right? The sections of the Common App that are devoted to project support are pretty straightforward. Project summary and concept. What is it that you're going to do and why are you doing it? And echoing what David said, we really want to know what, who, where, when. And then also really important is the why. Why are you doing? Why this project? Why now? That is frequently a very important part of the evaluation of these project support grants. Artistic collaborators in the Bay Area, artistic collaborators are really important. We want to know who you're working with. How are you working with them? Why are they the right people for you to be collaborating with? Are they local? Are they from out of town? Who are these folks? And then also community served. Who is this project for and how are you going to reach out to them? How are you going to engage them? So when you go to the Common App, you can look at the all of the questions are organized. There's a chunk of questions that are just about your organization with basic information like email address, phone number, websites, et cetera, et cetera. And if you were an individual artist, that's where you put your individual artist information. Then there's a section, is it general operating first?
I think it's
Project first. So then there's a big chunk of the application that is specifically devoted to a specific project, and you will answer all of the questions in that section about that project specifically. And then there's a general support section of the application, and that's where you'll enter all of the general information that David covered. So it's broken up into chunks because some funders are only asking for specific pieces of information. But again, if you fill out the Common App, you'll have all of that information sort of readily available for whichever kind of support you're looking for. Any questions before we move on to budgets?
So we only accept proposals for from nonprofit organizations and from fiscally sponsored groups, which are also known as affiliates. Right, and so we're most interested in, there are, for example, some artists that perform at the Marsh as solo performers that we support, but part of their application is they talk about what they're doing over the course of the year and the number of artists that they're going to be engaged in the development and performance of their work. So if they're working with a writer, if they're working with a dramaturg, if they're working with a, so even though they might think of themselves as an individual artist, and I think that might be true of a lot of your affiliates as well, you engage other musicians, you engage composers, you might commission new work. So, but if it's just an individual, for an individual to perform by themselves, it probably wouldn't be a strong proposal for our particular grant program.
Oh yeah, you should absolutely apply to all the places where you could get money. Always.
And you can receive it from more than
Yes. Yes. And you should.
And that's kind of what we're trying to achieve here is that you just do this once and then you say, now where can I shop this?
Yeah.
I've got it, the language, where can I cut and paste it to see if I can get from more than one? That's what we're encouraging. And in fact, it's we want to see the project happen. And so sometimes we can't do the, we can only do a portion of it. And so if we partner with others, we want to see it go.
Yeah. Yes, Mark.
All granting organizations that use Common App only fund nonprofits or fiscally sponsored.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Do all of the funders only fund to 501c3 and fiscally sponsored entities? I believe Theater Bay Area can fund to individuals directly. And InterMusic also funds non-sponsored projects but is also a fiscal sponsor. So I think it depends. And I think if you're unsure about eligibility, you'll have to check with each of the individual funders. All of the funders will have their eligibility information on their websites. For most of the foundations, we are required to fund to 501c3s or fiscally sponsored entities. We can't cut checks to individuals. The IRS will not let us. So what happens if you get more money than you need for your project? You make your project bigger. You do it more times. You put bells and whistles on it that you had not thought of before. I can't imagine very many artists who would be like, oh, I have too much money. I better give some of it back. No, you never give it back. You just find a way to spend it. You find a way to expand the project. You do more community engagement. You pay everybody more. Like you use the money. Yes. No, you never return the money. Never return the money. No. Yeah, philanthropy's first rule, we don't want the money back. We want you to do the work more so, as much as you possibly can. Make more art. Oh, yeah, question in the back. Go ahead. The question is from a person who has an organization, uh, which is a nonprofit upon which he is on the board of directors and is also an individual artist. I see no conflict of interest. I think we all wear multiple hats and we all have multiple roles to play. So if what you're asking is there a conflict between your organization applying and you as an individual applying? Oh, that's great. No, you should definitely be part of projects and apply for them with your organization. All of those things are fine. I think a lot of us, there are a lot of folks who run small nonprofit arts organizations who are also actively involved in the creation of the work. That is okay. I think we could all be like, yes, we do that.
Just to follow up on that, I think also we understand that in the Bay Area for our artists to make a living, it is you have to piece together jobs. And so I often will be working with somebody like now I'm representing, my work as, artistic director here. Now I'm working, and that's just the way things are, particularly in the Bay Area.
Yeah. Yes, go ahead, please.
How do you define art that most people play with it something like that? And what I was told, I got paid very little for totally enjoyable things. But I've made enough money that you look at all the hours working on that. Is that how you determine it's nonprofit? Because it's definitely a low dollar per hour kind of thing. But just so that something happens where that leads to something else, it still comes from a nonprofit place, correct? I think that's how do you define when you get an area that's not nonprofit?
Yeah, so the nonprofit designation is actually an IRS specific designation, a nonprofit charitable organization. It is not at all related to how much money you make. There are some very profitable nonprofit organizations like the NFL. Did you know that the NFL is a nonprofit organization? Right. So yeah, there you go. So just know, it it is an IRS designation, and it is not at all related to compensation for hours spent. It doesn't have anything to do with that. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, when you affiliate with now it's like, oh, it's public good, just knowing that everybody has to be say, keep on the whole thing.
Yeah. Go ahead,
This is a good segue. So just to clarify about fiscal sponsorship, because this can be kind of a gray area that's unknown or kind of hard to navigate. So as InterMusic SF is a fiscal sponsor, when an individual artist would like to apply for a grant that requires fiscal sponsorship, it means that the grantor, like these foundations, has to award a 501c3. That's what we are. So when you become fiscally sponsored, we extend our tax exemption nonprofit status to you, the individual, by accepting the grant on your behalf. So the foundation gives the grant to a 501c3, us, and then you show proof of musical activity the way that you told them that you were going to do. And then we disperse or re-grant those funds to you directly. And you have to report that as taxable income. But you have write-offs for all of the expenses, the people that you're paying for, and the places that you're doing things. So just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, please. Great. Mark, anything that we need to address? Great. We're going to plow into budget time because it's 6:55. Yeah. Let's talk about budgets. So there are templates available through the Common App for creating budgets. If you've never created a project or an organization budget before, as I said, the templates are super helpful just to give you a sense of level of granularity and what generally to think about including and what not to include. Now, in the templates, one thing to note is you may not need every single line item that is listed in that template. You are welcome to delete lines. You are welcome to add lines that are more pertinent to your project or your organization structure. But the templates are just a sense, it's to just like trigger for you, like, oh, I didn't think about including that in the budget, but I definitely should because that does cost money. So for the project budget, we're looking for two things. Both income and expenses should be noted on your budget, and they should be mostly balanced, right? Doesn't have to be exact, but mostly balanced. Income should include committed, pending, or projected revenue. And that it could include earned revenue, which is ticket sales, merchandise, et cetera, et cetera. Committed is any funds that you have already received, either through another funder or GoFundMe, something like that. Pending would be that application, right? If you're applying to community arts and you're expecting to get a $5,000 grant, you put that in your budget as a $5,000 grant that is pending because you have not received it yet. For expenses, again, no need to get too granular, but you should highlight in the ways in which the budget will support the project. So, right, if you propose an opera, but you do not have line items in your budget for things like costumes or sets, when we look at that budget, we will think that you have not thought an opera all the way through, right? So the budget should support the narrative that you're telling in the project description, right? Do you want to talk about the general?
Sure.
Okay.
So for an organizational budget, for general operating, we don't ask for project budgets because you're not applying for a project. We just ask for the overall organizational budget or entity budget over the course of the year. So you're looking for all of your projected income and your projected expenses for the year. We ask for this year and last year. And last year, we want to see what your actual income and expenses were. And this year, we want to see what your projected income and expenses were. And the reason why we ask that is because we want to see how realistic it is. Last year, if you made a certain amount, brought in a certain amount in income, this year you're projecting triple that. Explain that, please. What makes you believe that you can be successful in generating that? That might be a very good reason. This year, have grants coming in. I know that I'll have ticket sales. Last year, I didn't do that. So it just makes sense of why you believe that you'll be able to do it. Remember, one of the things that the funder is asking themselves as they review your application is this thing going to really happen? Do they have the capacity to actually do this? And if you're saying, well, last year we made very little and this year we're projecting quadruple that and I wouldn't really have a plan for it, it's like, well, show me the plan. What is it? How are you going to get there? The other thing to note that's important is indicate I guess for this audience, it doesn't, fiscal year isn't really important. We're not going to worry about that. If you think of yourself as having a fiscal year, you probably have it's aligned with a calendar year. For nonprofit 501c3 designated nonprofit organizations as coded by the IRS, you'll have a fiscal year lined up with that. We just want to know what that is.
All right. What other questions do folks have about budgets? Yeah, go ahead, please. Yes, the question is about volunteer services. Generally speaking, we consider those in-kind donations, and in-kind donations are a huge part of nonprofit work. If you are getting any goods and services donated, that should absolutely show up in your budget. So if you're getting a rehearsal hall for free, right? If you have volunteers who are doing particular work, if somebody's donating photography services, for example, all of that can show up on the budget. You just want to make sure that it balances on the income side as well as on the expenses. So if you have a rehearsal space that is valued at $2,000 that you are getting for free, you should note that in the expenses. And then you should also note that as a $2,000 in-kind donation in your income. But in-kind is a huge part of budgets.
So would that be included sort of building a musical project? We expect it's going to cost $5,000 to put on this event. The grant's going to cover $4,000. We'll cover the other $1,000 and hope that sale. In other words, the reason we're asking for funds is because we may the project may cost more than what's being given. Is it okay for us to contribute that more amount and put that in as like an in-kind, not donation, because it was just in-kind cost going on, in-kind income.
Yes. So the question is about how to represent the contributions of the artist, the work that is being done. So what I like to see in a budget is the real cost of producing an event. I want to know if you were compensating yourself fairly, what would that look like?
It's actually different from that. If the artists are charging $4,000, I have to pay $4,000, and the grant's going to only cover $3,000. I'm willing to pay the other $1,000. Is that okay or not?
It is okay, and you are welcome to list individual donations as an income source. However, I think when I look at a proposal, I feel like I want to see the best case scenario. So what I want to see is, how do you plan to raise all the money so that you don't have to contribute your own funds? And I also want to see real cost. I want to see, like, what is the real cost of the labor that goes into putting this on? And what is a plan that you have to cover it? And again, it's optimistic. It is the best case scenario, but that's what a proposal is. That's what a plan is that you're imagining it's going to go perfectly. And we know it doesn't always go perfectly. We know it doesn't often go perfectly, but that's what we want to see. Any other budget questions?
template, and Marcus has responded to that and said he's working on turning it into a PDF. So that's a technical thing.
Oh, yes, I should say the budget templates right now are only available as Excel documents. So you are welcome to take those Excel documents and turn them into whatever format works for you. And again, I reiterate, you do not have to use these budget templates. If these templates don't work for you, if you already have a budget that you have created in a format that works for you, please feel free to use whatever template you have.
One quick follow-up to this. One of the things I'll just ask from somebody who has to look through many, many applications, if you do use an Excel spreadsheet and turn it into a PDF doc, please check that it's transferred correctly and that I can actually see the numbers. I would say 5% of the PDFs that I receive, it's like, well, here's the categories, but the way that it cut it off, I can't see the numbers and I have to call and follow up. So you'll save everyone time if you just double check it before you upload, please. Thank you.
Okay, and then why would you choose one fiscal year time frame or another? Why July through June, for example?
Oh, so the question is about fiscal year designation and if you have an organization that works with a lot of education organizations, right? For example, if you do a lot of youth engagement and you're in schools, having a calendar year as your fiscal year means that you're basically splitting up the school year, and the accounting becomes very complicated. So the fiscal year is a designation that you can decide that works best for your organization when it makes most sense for you to plan your future budget and reconcile your past budget. And for anybody who works in education, summertime is that time, right? So that's why you would have a July through June. Otherwise, a lot of people just use the calendar year because that's what makes most sense to them and that's how they plan their lives. So it's just for efficiency's sake. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. I want to plow through quickly because I know that we are inching over time. So we already talked about this a little bit, but I'll go over it quickly. Once you have the information captured in the Common App, either in PDF or Word document form, once you have sort of answered all the questions, each funder uses its own grants management system because, of course, we do. When you go to apply for each of the different funders, you will have to log on to their grants management system. Thankfully now, they are almost exclusively online because we used to take paper applications not that long ago, and that was crazy. JotForm is the InterMusic SF online platform. But the other ones are Flux, Giving Data, Foundant, Submittable, Salesforce. They all have their own little quirks and tricks, but they are all just online databases. So you cut and paste into those fields, you hit submit. It'll tell you if you've done something wrong. But the technology side of things can be a real barrier for some people. I invite people to ask for help. If you need help, contact the program staff, contact the foundation staff or the funding staff, because the technology should never be the thing getting in the way of you applying for funds. So if there's anything that is not working or frustrating, just ask for help because we will help you. Because again, to David's point, we want to fund you. We want to fund projects. We want to get the money that we have out into the hands of artists making great things. And again, technology should not be the issue. All right, next slide. We need to move on. Okay, next slide. So again, you're not required to use the Common App, right? If you want to go directly to the InterMusic Jot form and apply directly to InterMusic, you can absolutely do that. There's nothing to stop you from applying directly to the Fleishhacker Foundation or any of the other funders. What I would offer is that if you are planning to apply to more than one funder that is involved in the Common App, using the Common App helps create that efficiency. So it allows you to read and fill out the application materials on your own time. It is available ahead of time. If you are a 6 a.m. type of worker, or if you're a 2 o'clock in the morning type of worker, it's there for you, right? Using the Common App gets you prepared to have application materials ready for when that deadline hits. So a lot of times it's a scramble to get the materials in by the deadline. I am a procrastinator, and so I feel that. So having the application materials prepared in advance is great. Gets you 90% of the way toward a completed application. I can't stress that enough. You're almost done before you've even started. And uses the same language to answer the most commonly asked questions. So recognizing that each funder has their own platform, and each funder might ask you one or two additional questions that's specific to their needs. Again, you can absolutely go that way, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to use the Common App, it's a tool that's available for you. Next, we just have some general grant writing tips, just general. And this was like me this afternoon, just being like, this is top of mind. But I'm sure Crystal and David have a lot more. And we are happy to use this opportunity to answer any questions or clarify anything that you've always wanted to know, like what makes a good, solid grant application? What should I include in a proposal? So this is what I came up with. Going back to David's point, the basics. You would be surprised how often it is difficult to find the basics. Make sure you just say what, who, when, where. Just say, I am writing a concerto to be performed by this group at this time in this location. It may sound boring to not have flowery prose around it, but that sentence is so great to have. Just the thing itself. Simplify. David brought this up earlier, but again, in many cases, bullet points, lists, short descriptions. Don't feel like everything has to be flowing narrative language. It can be but. And that tells us exactly what we need to know, and we don't have to dig for it, right? Be passionate. Why this project? Why now? There are a lot of things that you could do. There are so many pieces of music that you could perform. Why'd you choose this one? Why now? Of all the things in the world, why are you taking your time to make this? Why are you asking other people to take their time to come and experience it? Why right now? Show us why, because it's important for us to know. We don't know. I don't know. And then last, be yourself. Don't feel like you have to write to what a funder wants to hear. Use your voice, use your language. As you can tell, I am a somewhat casual person when I talk and present. And I can't not be that. And I would much rather just be myself and then hopefully try and make some sense of what I'm trying to say. But I'd rather hear that from you as well. It doesn't have to be language that funders want to hear or language that you think funders want to hear. Tell us in your voice what you're doing. We want to know who you are. What else, David? What other things? Yes.
Yeah.
Great question. Great question. The question was, what if your who, what, where, when is budget contingent? So again, a proposal is the vision. It's the best case scenario. And I can tell you, I fund the 130 projects every year. Do all of them go exactly according to plan? No. Does any of them? No, probably not. Because you lose a venue, or the roof caves in, or one of your musicians loses their visa and they have to go back to where they came from, or a dancer breaks their leg, or somebody gets pregnant. Like, anything can happen, or a pandemic. Like, it's never going to go according to plan. Hopefully not. Another one. Nothing ever goes to plan. And so I think if you have a plan, tell us the best case scenario. If there are certain things about that proposal that you don't have secured yet, like, for example, if you don't know who all your participating musicians are going to be, that's okay too. You can just tell us how you plan to find them. Who are you looking for? What is that curatorial process like? You may not know everything at the time of proposal. And if there's a question, just own it and say, I don't know what the venue is going to be. We're looking for a space that's BART accessible, that seats about 150 people. If you know of anywhere, let me know. So it's fine to not know. And again, proposals are just proposals. Nobody is going to come back and kneecap you if you don't do exactly what you said in your proposal. All right.
I just want to follow up on that a bit. You might want to think about when you're ready to start applying. If everything is extremely contingent, remember that you're going to be competing against people who might be farther along. And so in the kind of competitive, review cycle, you want to give as many definite things that if the grant application is, if I had money, I might begin to start thinking about a project in which we could conceivably, you're not there yet. And so you want all of the pieces that you definitely have in place. These are the artists that are signed up. This is what we're going to do. The way that I think about it is the same way that if you were getting a bid for a contracting project in your house and somebody was going to redo your kitchen, if the contractor came in and said, there might be a stove, possibly a sink, you'd be like, this is not the right contractor to me. If it's like, the stove is going to be this, the sink is going to be this, the thing is this. We don't know the backsplash yet. That's going to be worked out later, but these are the basic elements of what's going to be there. These are the things that are still contingent that we're working out. And you want to make sure that it looks like a kitchen before you hit send. Okay? Anything else? Yeah.
Thinking about this a little bit. Yeah, I think that there, along with kind of be passionate, the why, I would kind of take some time and really reflect on maybe your work as a whole, even if you're not an organization, if you're getting an ensemble together for this particular project. Why do you do your work in general? What are you kind of filling in the community that needs care? I think thinking about your work and where it sits within this very vibrant and beautiful place, and diverse, and also just a place that needs more. Where do you sit, and how do you solve that with your work and and your communications, and your collaborations and the other entities of the arts ecosystem that often go unnoticed, that you're helping support through driving your work forward? I think acknowledging those pieces, and you will paint a fuller picture of all of the good artwork that you are producing or proposing to do. Do you want to go to technically Q&A?
I mean,
Do you want this slide?
sure. We can have the slide. Oh, this slide is important though. This slide is important. So this is the upcoming opportunities for all of the funders that are using the Common App. I think we can send out this deck to everybody. Should we send out the deck to everyone? We'll send out the deck to everyone too. Okay. But InterMusic, Fleishhacker Foundation, Gerbode Foundation, Special Awards in the Arts, Theater Bay Area's cash grants, Community Arts Program, and the Rainin. The Rainin is the only one that is still TBA. They don't have their exact dates announced for the fall yet. But all of the program deadlines, we have a handful happening at the end of April, mid to end of April, a handful happening in summer. So just starting to think about, you know, your timelines of when you want to consider applying and which grant programs you want to apply to. Also, just recognizing that you should check each of these funders' websites for eligibility and guidelines and things like that before you move forward. Yeah, go ahead, please. The Creative Work Fund is a project of the Walter and Elise Haas Fund. They just closed their applications, I think. I think they just closed their applications, but that's a great program to look at. It's an annual program, so they only do it once a year. But these are all Common App opportunities. The Creative Work Fund is like Common App light. Like they've adopted some of the Common App questions, but they still wanted to keep so many of their own questions that they couldn't really be considered Common App users. So, but that, which is okay.
That's another point, because where we started, the starting point for the Common App is we collected the guidelines from about 25 different local arts funders. And then that process that Margot talked about, we tried to construct the questions so that they're at least in the ballpark of, we're trying to attract other funders to the Common App. I'll be a bit transparent about that. We're doing our best to try and get more to join. At the same time, there is a good fighting chance that the language that you develop for the Common App might be very close to what it is that they're looking for, because we tried to develop the questions based on an assessment of what all they're doing. We can't do anything if they change their language now, but at one point it was very close. And so we've done our best to be helpful there. I don't, I can't think of any, from the Fleishhacker Foundation is no. Oh, is there any issue with paying people from other countries that have I-9s or something like that? From our standpoint, it's nothing that we become involved in or consider. There might be other compliance issues that you have to think about for other reasons, but from our standpoint, it's nothing that we ask about in terms of our grant making.
Yeah, and the only other thing that I would say about that is, you know, we are a collection of Bay Area based funders, and a lot of the funders really prioritize Bay Area artists and supporting Bay Area artists, which is a good thing. So it's just important to be mindful of the sort of ratio and balance, right? Like there's always going to be folks coming from outside that you want to collaborate with, which is fine. But if it's one Bay Area artist and then a whole bunch of people from outside of the Bay Area, that's not likely going to be a super appealing application for place-based funders in the Bay Area.
Things we wouldn't know to ask, things that really irritate or make you think you definitely want.
Yeah. An interesting question about pet peeves and insider tips from philanthropy. Oh gosh. Okay, this is such a basic one, but if you have attachments, just like make sure you title your attachment what it is, like project budget for Margot Melcon. Like, because I download hundreds of documents. And if I have to then search for yours because it's titled like untitled document number 4, that kind of stuff makes me crazy. Similarly, okay, if you're submitting a proposal for a project and you include work samples, give us queuing information. So if you send us a 45-minute video, if you don't tell us which 5 minutes to watch, we're going to watch the first 5 minutes. Is the first 5 minutes the best part of any performance? No, not usually. But that's what you're giving us if you don't give us queuing information. So be mindful of that. What else? Jargon?
Jargon, and also, you know, I'm a big fan of Proust. I'm in a Proust reading group. It's not this a grant application is not time to show me that you can do Proust. Give me Kerouac, give me Hemingway, like get to it. What is it? But if you try it, be on your 60th write up and have somebody start with back in the no, just what is it? What are you doing?
That's fair. That's fair. Crystal, what's your question? The question is about whether first-time applicants should reach out directly to program officers to engage in the conversation, find out if it's a good fit, ask questions. Yes, I encourage that. I will say a couple of things about that. First of all, there are varying sizes of funders represented by this group of people. Some of us are departments of one. Some folks have a bigger, broader staff. And so the capacity is a little bit different depending. So just being mindful of that. But before you reach out, please look at the website. We spend a lot of time putting a lot of information on websites. There are usually sections of frequently asked questions, whether they're called frequently asked questions or just a collection of frequently asked questions that we put the answers to on the website. Read those because that'll provide a lot of clarity. And then you're also welcome to reach out and ask more specific questions. A lot of us do informational webinars for our individual programs. Those are opportunities to learn more and ask questions, things like that. Do some research is a good idea first.
And then the other thing is, if you're going to one of our jobs as program officers, as people who oversee these grant programs, is fairness. If I'm contacted by people asking for, I see perfectly well that you fund in San Francisco, Alameda, and Contra Costa counties, and I live in another county, and I want you to consider an exception for me. Any exception I make for one, out of fairness, I have to make for all. I can't make exceptions for all. Therefore, it's my job that this is what our board has decided as our geographic area. I can't consider exceptions. That's getting a little bit into the pet peeve, but it's look at our guidelines. That's what we fund. Some, I guess, after a long time, maybe a grant applicant could considerably think about exceptions, but not right off the bat. Sure.
You brought cards?
I have paper cards, like old school paper cards.
No, on the last what you were saying, so every funder, maybe Bay Area. Going into the
Exactly. Right. So different. So there's grant programs that are like from the city of Berkeley. Well, you have to be in Berkeley because that's where the money's coming from, right? So.
Any other online questions, Mark? Okay. So what I would say is we are available. And Crystal is going to send out this deck, and you're also welcome to send out my email address.
Oh, that's very generous.
So, I mean, my email
know.
address is like splashed all over our website. It's practically written like a bat signal. Like you can always find me. So, if there's any questions that you have, just ask. Yeah, about the Common App, about our grant program. I can speak to other people's grant programs, sort of, but I will push you to ask them directly. Yeah.
Well done, really good job.
Thank you to our online community.
Okay, can you put those people back? I just want to give a closing remark, a warm thank you to Margot and David for coming and sharing all of this, like very important and helpful knowledge. As you know, the musician community, we just, sometimes I feel like, oh, hi, everybody. Great. Oh, it's great to see. You can turn on your cameras and say hello again. Yeah, so it was just a pleasure to have you all. And this was a fantastic resource. All right, everyone go. Don't forget those surveys and we'll go get that money.